Hello viewers and welcome to my channel. Thank you very much for tuning into this video. May I welcome you to World of Tanks. It has been a while since this has appeared on my channel, so I thought I may as well go back to it. This World of Tanks video is a review, and the tank that's being reviewed today is the VK.30.01D, which for the purposes of this video I'm going to call the VK1D, or just a 1D. Why am I reviewing this tank? Well, I have struggled to get those 3 stripes of excellence, or one of 3 stripes of excellence, which appear as 3 for the German line, for quite a while now. And I've been wondering if it's easy or difficult for players to do well in this tank. The answer is no, it's really not. You have to throw away about half of what you know about medium tanks in exchange for decent games in this tank. Is this tank a good tank? No. Unfortunately, it's not. For a medium tank, it's fairly average, but I'd say worse than average. What are the main problems of the tank then? What are the main limiting factors? Number 1 is that big frontal armour mantlet. It's not good enough. It's 60mm thick, and although it's slanted, a light tank from tier 5 will go through it like a hot knife through butter, and that makes it pretty weak, unless you angle it at some ridiculous angle, which chances are you're not going to be able to shoot back at. Next problem of the tank is that turret. Why? 32 degrees turret traverse is something I'd expect from the Japanese line, because it's quite bad. Let's compare it to some other medium tanks of its tier. The Type 58, it's got 48 degrees per second. A43, 48 degrees per second. The EZ8 Sherman has 38 degrees per second. And the only one that falls behind is the Sherman Jumbo with 32 degrees per second, making the VK1D quite limited in its turret traverse. The final problem I have with this tank is that gun, because although it's quite an accurate gun, its reload time is bad. It takes 5 seconds to reload this tank, thereabouts, when you're stock, and it takes 4.22 thereabouts when you're fully trained with a fully trained crew. So your damage per minute is pretty poor. But then you get the damage roll itself. On average it's 150. Let's compare it to the other tanks, for example. Let's go back to that Type 58. Standard shell damage anywhere between 120 and 200 hit points of damage. A43 struggles, however. It's only got 144 max damage. The EZ8 Sherman 110. And the E2, the Sherman Jumbo, also has 110. So you may say it's better on the damage, but their rates of fire are considerably higher. This medium tank is not designed to brawl. With that slow turret traverse and that even slower reload time, you'll have difficulty circling opponents and doing decent damage, unless they're completely isolated. So how are you supposed to use this tank? Well, I got my first mark of excellence by using this tank more like a tank destroyer and less like a medium tank. Okay, so this medium tank isn't a great medium tank, but what can it do? It's probably best to play this tank as a tank destroyer, or something of a similar gameplay strategy. In my replay I'm going to show you, you'll see the medium tank style being thrown away and being replaced with the tank destroyer style that has got me my first stripe of excellence. And I'll show you how you should do that in that replay. What are the good things about that gun then? Well, it's got anywhere between 101 and 169 shell damage, and the penetration is very good, anywhere between 113 and 188mm, which is probably thicker than the frontal armour for tier 6 and 7 tanks you may face. However, you may have problems with the tier 8 tanks that you sometimes get over-tiered matches in, such as the IS-3 or the WZ-111. I can tell you from the experience it's quite boring bouncing continuously off the side armour, especially due to the fact that, it's flat. What you're shooting at is flat right there. Of course, if you are attacking a WZ-111 or a IS-3 from the side, ignore aiming for the actual tank superstructure and aim for the tracks instead. It is much easier to penetrate below that spall armour than it is to go through it. So what do I recommend for you if you are going to choose to play this medium tank as a tank destroyer? Well, I'm quite cheapskate, so the two things that I would put on this tank are camouflage net and binoculars. Because if you're playing this like a tank destroyer, when you're taking your shots you should be still. If you have to move your tank, you're doing it wrong. Your turret traverse should help you shoot targets from long distances that are moving, and you should not have to move your entire tank if you're in a correct position which is well defended. You will get reports from the other side of the map via your radio. You can fit a tier 9 radio on this tank, and so long as your view range is larger than your radio, most of the time you'll be able to hit the targets that people are reporting in. This is especially useful if your scouts, like they normally do, go kamikazeing off in front of you, because if you pull up and stop, you'll be able to hit the targets that they mark, which are quite happily having a shooting galley at the target, which unfortunately happens to be one of your own team, that's just come charging towards them. So really, this tank is more dangerous the longer it stays alive. So similar rules apply, as do with tank destroyers, to this tank. One of the main rules is that if you are being shot at, you should move. You should get further away from the enemy, so that they can't shoot you, but you can shoot them once they're spotted. Similarly, if you can't see the enemy, you should get closer or in a better position where you can either ambush or advance on the enemy so that you can shoot them, and again they can't shoot you back. It's much better because you're a medium tank and you have the mobility and speed to move forward, or in some cases move backwards, to a better position. You should use that medium tank speed to get around the map to better positions. That is a key recommendation I would make for the 1D, because that top speed of 56 km an hour, whilst it's average for medium tanks, is very good for a tank destroyer style gameplay, because it means you can rapidly move around the map to reposition, defend a flank, or advance in some cases. This tank excels in positions where only its turret can be seen. Though the gun depression is somewhere between 5 and 10 degrees, its main feature is that armour on top of the turret. It's thicker than the hull armour with 80mm and it's slightly angled. You will bounce more shells off the front of that armour than you will off the front of your hull armour. So get into a position where you can shoot over a hill, for example, or a small mound between you, and you can see the enemy target and they can only see your turret. If you continually rotate your turret, they're going to have a much harder time at penetrating that frontal section. And whilst the cheeks are significantly weaker with only 45mm of armour, if they're at a strange angle, they will definitely ricochet. The only weakness of the turret is the cupola, which is why I suggest to you that you should continually move your turret. At much higher tiers, such as tier 8, this tank struggles with penetration. Though I never load APCR, if you ever get into these situations, it may be handy to have a handful of APCR rounds lying around. Because if you're the last one left, and you can't penetrate the enemy tank from the side or the front, that means they've only got one place to shoot at, and that's the rear. And that means they're going to be knowing that you're going to be coming for their rear, and they will prepare to shoot back. And because they got such a high damage roll, and a superior rate of fire sometimes, you're going to have real trouble competing at these tiers. So the key recommendation for tier 8 games is stay as hidden as possible. Shoot when other players are shooting nearby, but do not shoot on your own. Because if you shoot on your own, the chances are you're about to be shot by artillery, or alternatively a very heavy tank. That can happen, and getting one-shotted in the VK can also happen. and it is not an enjoyable experience, as I'm sure you can imagine. If you ever do get into a circumstance where you are surrounded, use that medium tank speed to get away from trouble. You'll see an incidence of this in the replay I'm going to show you, and I'll point it out pretty clearly to you, because this was one of the few times that I used the speed to get away from a situation where I had made a mistake, and I was glad I had that speed. Unfortunately, I didn't have the acceleration that I probably needed to get away clean. However, I got away soon enough, and that was good enough for me, because I survived the game and had a corker of a game, as you're about to see. So here we are on Redshire, in my VK.30. And this game, it looks fairly balanced actually. Between the two teams, there's a few greens here and there. Artillery's a green. On their team they've got a good artillery, got a good scout, we've got an average Sherman player. But overall it's just red, as with most of my matchups. And the first thing I do is I go over to the hill location F9, because that's a good sniping position. And I would strongly advise you go there if you're going to play in this tank, in the tank destroyer kind of gameplay. And as I do, and most of my team does, we get distracted by the number of people that are suddenly pouring over the hills at E4 and D5. They normally do this a bit later in their game, but for some reason they've all decided to become quite exposed and charge straight up this hill. So I start putting in some shots because that gun is pretty good at long range, and whatever I can see I can shoot. And this is what I described before. You shouldn't be able to be seen, but you can shoot back. This isn't due to tactical maneuvers, this is purely due to the fact that the enemy has blundered their way up here and is now paying dearly with tank losses. They've lost one tank, they're about to lose a second tank. This Panzer IV is just gone. T-25 gone. Their artillery is gone. So they are losing quite badly, and I thought, wow, this game's going to be over. But it really wasn't. So I move up to the position which I really wanted to get to before they started charging over, which is this hill. So long as the hill isn't being contested by heavies, you can shoot back at anyone who's on the encounter flag zone, and if they can't spot you, then you just get continuous fire, pinning them down. And with the accuracy of this gun, it's much more fun to do it this way rather than get close and personal. So I'm looking for some sniping shots here, but unfortunately there aren't any. Now the heavies on the left flank have started to move, but unfortunately I am one of two, maybe three enemy allied tanks, who are on the right flank, and I can already see where this is going, so I'm just trying to take some shots before they all come streaming over the KV-1S, M5A1, KV-1, etc. at C9 and C8, because I won't be able to hold them off on my own, not even with a camo rating. So I move over down to quite a silly position really. If the KV-1S, or anyone actually came around that corner, it wouldn't take long for them to finish me off. If they detract me, that would be the end of it. So making an amateur mistake there, but I quickly make up for that with the top speed, which you're about to witness. So here we go, charging off down the hill at 30, 40. It's a very good tank on the acceleration once you've researched the engines, but without the engine research it's still a very good tank on the acceleration. I'm stuck on the engines, and that allows me to get into the position I wanted here, which is cover from the right flank and able to shoot in the centre still. That scout is a wild goose chase, so I decide that even though I possibly could have taken a shot a few seconds earlier, I move forward. Plough through some of the destructive housing section, and you can see our TOG 2 is taking serious hits. Well, that's his fault entirely. He has moved up with no cover and he's exposed his entire side to the right flank, which is non-existent in the defensive for our allied team. It looks like we may make a breakthrough and cut off any resistance from the rear with that T1 Heavy and T14 moving that direction. However, we're going to quickly find out that they were not the most competent drivers and did not know how to kill a particular tank, which was going to become a menace later on. there's the KV-85 I'm talking about. That guy was a nightmare. He starts dueling with a T1 Heavy who's requesting help, but that T1 Heavy has enough hit points to duel with the slow reloading KV-85. Speaking of KVs, I'm attacking the KV-1 now. I don't even have to aim because my penetration is way higher than this KV-1's armour. And down he goes, and I've done 934 damage, even though I'm missing shots like that. Now I spend a good bit of time amusing myself trying very hard to aim at either one of these two tanks. I eventually just aim for the scout, but he's so small and he's hidden behind a rock which I can't see through the foliage. There he is, there's he's exposed. I think he's going back, he's not. I shoot a blind shot here and then I just move because I've wasted too much time. The VK.30 should quite easily be capable of dealing with an M5A1 so long as he doesn't move from his position, but alas, that M5A1 is no scrub, and he knows what to do, and he's in a tank that can shift. Now I've decided that I'm going to set up and wait for the KV-85 on the assumption that he may be coming for our position. And basing it on his last known position, I decide to pen myself against the walls so I can see him if he moves from his position. So here I am, camping on top of the ridgeline now, and preparing to shoot this KV-85. Our SU-5 and FV-304 have finally taken the advice, and they should probably move if that scout is still alive. Now, I should really have picked up on some key points here, and I really want you to focus on these points as well, because although this is a tank review, you should take some advice from people who are making replays, like myself. Take a look at this M5A1. I realise round about now he is a serious threat to our artillery, but the key point here is that he is on the other side of the hill. Look where the VK is now. He has moved round, and he has not seen the KV-85. Here comes the M5A1, as I said, posing a threat to the SU-5. Look here. Can you see this shot? This one here. That is a KV-85 shot. It's not the artillery, otherwise it would have made a much larger splash. And I should have seen this way before, but I was far too focused on this scout tank. If the KV-85 is shooting at me from there, and he started shooting at that VK.30, I should have realised that the KV-85 is not in that corner, and I should have pursued that M5A1. But here I was simply too afraid of taking damage from that KV-85. And in a non-tactical panic, I started backing myself up forwards and backwards, confused and disorientated about what I should do next. This cost my team dearly. If I'd made the correct decision here, I should have advanced on the M5A1. The VK.30 should have tried to hold off against the KV-85, and in the process marked him out for me, which would have made me aware that he had moved from his previous position. And here comes the kamikaze M5A1, who's decided to reset, and that is artillery, which is my second pointer, which I blatantly missed in the heat of battle. If artillery is hitting me, he must be hitting from that direction I'm pointing at now, where the 3 green tanks died. That is because his trajectory is relatively flat for his gun, and the range he's at means that trajectory is even flatter. He would have hit the hill if he was on the other side, the position I'm about to go and attack. So my tactical thinking here is I want to relieve the pressure off this capture point. You can see me here trying to say kill the artillery in 85, and lo and behold there's the 85, who I clearly, as I pointed out just then, should have known about what was going to come that way. So I think if KV-85 is going to hide, then the next most important player is that M44. He is a very dangerous opponent. With that gun he could destroy any one of our tanks with only a handful of shots, making him a very dangerous opponent. So I thought like an artilleryman would. Well, an artilleryman as myself would. I decided to go for the position of A4. I thought that maybe he would be camping on the other side of this ridgeline, and unfortunately he wasn't. So I decided to move for A4. But look at the cap circle now. Enemy base capture is frozen. This tells me another vital pointer. The KV-85 is now in close enough range that it doesn't matter what I do here. he's going to kill our VK.30.01H. And he's going to kill our artillery as well. I didn't read the warning signs from the VK.30.01H. I was too busy trying to hunt the artillery and prevent him from doing any further damage. But by now, it was far too late. The VK had his fate sealed, and it was all down to my technical blunder. I did not see that the enemy base capture was being held up, and I did not see that artillery had shot at my position. And lo and behold, there is the KV-85 in the cap circle, right where I said he would be. As he proceeds to finish off the VK, he then moves for the Su-5. This unfortunately cost my team dearly, and sets me back to just myself and the FV-304. So as I fast forward around here, you may or may not realise, but this is me trying to artillery hunt. I'm trying to find artillery to make up for the loss that I just lost. The loss of the VK was bad enough, but the fact that I had nothing to show for it was even worse. So I come up here, and using that binoculars and camo net setup, I decided that if I could shoot the KV-85, I'd be able to base reset. I couldn't because he was well beyond the hill on the other side of the map. We'll find him out very soon. So I realised that if artillery or myself stands any chance of resetting, the first thing that needs to happen is that somebody spots that circle. Artillery isn't going to do it, I've got to do it. So here I come, charging in. Artillery takes a shot, firing artillery, and misses. And here, I made one of the biggest mistakes I could possibly make. I stopped in front of an M44. If I'd have penetrated side armour, cupola, anywhere except for my frontal armour, I would have died, but look where it penetrated. RNG saved my soul. It was here that I made a tactical error as well. I used my repair kit on my gun. And look where the KV-85 is. So I would have thinking, post-game, I had one of two choices. I either go right or I go left. Going right would have taken me around the KV-85, and he would struggle to climb over the hill and take shots at me, which would allow me to go around and flank him. But going left provided immediate cover and a route to that back road, which may be able to give me a spotting position to shoot him back. And you may not be able to tell, but I am panic-stricken here. I am sweating, my heart is beating, I am terrified, because I've never had a situation like this, and I'm not that cool-minded. So, what I really should have done here was get straight behind that house, because that's solid structure. But I was more focused on the long term, getting behind that windmill. I was focused on getting into cover, knowing full well that I wouldn't be able to 1v1 this KV-85. But this was a huge blunder, and I should have paid for this. He detracks me here, and I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what I'm doing, neither of us know what we're doing really. He detracks me here, and he should have come straight up and killed me. Getting torrents of abuse from the Su-5, because that guy hates my brains out, straight out. T-14's raging because I made a mistake, and again, they're both right, I made a mistake. But here's the real mistake. I made a tactical error, and I turned right instead of left in the heat of the battle. Something I really didn't mean to do. And with no repair kit, and no ability to pack an additional repair kit, I was really stuffed. If he came round the corner and beat me on the reload, he would stuff me in. Fortunately, he didn't. So I went straight into cover behind that windmill, making the correct decision, finally. And I am saved here by that FV-304. So, I've done 1,677 damage, and I'm getting called a chicken, but who cares? Because we won. Artillery saved my soul with that shot. It burns him out, and eventually it kills him. I leave with 2 kills and over 1,600 damage on a win. Happy me. So I finished that game with 1,600 plus damage and 2 kills. and I'm quite happy with that. I'd like to point out that I also got a Top Gun award, and I did more than double the experience and damage done for my team. Hats off to the FV304 who had a good game that time, and the KV85 who, if I hadn't made a fool of his plans and hadn't had RNG against him, he would have had a great game. So that's how you VK1D, taking note that you should use sniping positions, you should use your mobility to get around, and you should use the accuracy of the gun at long ranges to get the most amount of damage. This has been Runix, and thank you very much for tuning in. If you'd like to see more reviews, then please let me know by giving this video a thumbs up below. It lets me know whether or not you would like to see more content. If you think this was good, and you think other people should see it, then of course, please feel free to share. That means that more people will see it, and I also know that if more people see it, then it becomes more popular, and then it means I will know that this video series is a good idea. If you enjoy it that much and you don't want to miss it, then please subscribe. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. Goodbye.